We'll say if you look up wherever you get your podcasts, look up Digital Trends, you'll find ours right there. And let's talk about podcasts right now. We have certainly an expert in the field joining us, Jeremy Slate, the CEO of Command Your Brand Media. Hello.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me today, my friend.
Thanks for joining us. Excited to get into this and talk about particularly some of the trends that you are seeing because you're such at the forefront of this. But for everybody watching, can we get a little bit of your background and how you got into this medium?
So I actually have my master's degree in ancient history, taught school for a little bit, and went through a bunch of different things before I finally started my podcast, Create Your Own Life, which has hit the top 100 in iTunes. I've interviewed some amazing celebrities like three-time Indy 500 champion Elio Castroneves, Grant Cardone, the national championship host of Ohio State, Jim Tressel. So I've gotten to interview some really, really cool people. And then in early 2016, we actually started our agency, which is Command Your Brand Media, where we take a PR spin on podcast placement. My co-founder has actually been a publicist for about 10 years. So we're really helping people to run PR strategy in the podcast space and not only be on the right shows, but also to really harness that to build your brand and your following as well.
Let's talk about some of the, I want to get into actually some more of what that PR side of it is as well. But before we do that, let's talk about maybe some overall trends in podcasting and what you've seen, particularly, I would say within the last couple of years. I feel like it's really reached a new plateau and it's going into new directions and really getting noticed for what a powerful medium it is versus before. But how have you seen this?
So it's interesting too, because I think in like 2012, it hit what people thought was that first peak. And then things have started building again ever since. And actually this year, Apple's going to be getting rid of the iTunes platform and going to a dedicated podcast app, which they already have on the phone device, and a dedicated Apple Music app. And I think that's a really big deal because in that they've actually taken the categories that they originally had and broken those down to even more categories, because before they didn't all quite make sense. And what they're doing now is they're actually going to make discoverability a much bigger deal and easier to find shows. So number one, it's a really big deal that you can actually find more shows. But then number two, the way the trend is going in advertising, we're looking at by the year 2020, it's going to be about $1.6 billion is the current trend that'll be spent on advertising and podcasts. And by the end of this year, this should be the first year that the podcast space hits $1 billion in total advertising spent. And it's very cool as well because one of the big trends that Apple has talked about too is in their beta stats program, they found that listeners actually stick around for about 80% of an episode. So you're seeing people sticking around to a platform. Advertising is really sticking there as well. So it's a really huge deal right now.
It is. I mean, it's with that destination listening. If somebody's a fan of whatever the show is, they want to hear the whole thing. And it seems to me that they're going to be more receptive to the advertising that's also on that platform because they trust the hosts. They trust whoever it is that they're listening to each week. How have you seen it with brands, I guess, maybe with on the advertising side, I guess. Let's go with that. How have you seen advertisers turn around and now, investing this to where it's almost $1 billion? What are some of the big things that they're seeing for takeaways?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, Tim Ferriss had actually tried an experiment not too long ago with advertising on his show because he's always advertised a lot of really great products. And he actually tested a model where he went to a user donation supported model. And he actually had a lot of his listeners saying, hey, Tim, we actually missed the advertising because it told us what you believe in and what you look at. And he actually brought advertising back. So the thing brands are seeing is it's not quite like an ad, it's more like a testimonial, because a lot of times these hosts are using these products or they're using these services, so they're actually listening to it as more of, do I want to use this in my life or my business or whatever, rather than just another product that's being promoted on a show. Or if you go on a radio ad, I've heard some 60-second radio spots and you're like, people don't talk like that normally. So it's a much different type of pitch as opposed to typical advertising.
Yeah, I would think, with a radio ad, it's easy. We're all kind of programmed just to tune that out. Okay, there's the start of the ad block. I may hear one or two words and that's about it. Whereas if it's in part of a show, I feel like, that's much more of a personal connection that you have, or at least a virtual personal connection. So looking at it from there, with your company, now you go into different podcasts or brands, and let's walk through a little more of the specifics of what you do.
So we work with a lot of CEOs and founders, and basically they'll come to us and they'll say, hey, I'm looking to build my following online, or I'm looking to grow my brand, or I have a product I'm launching. Because the cool thing about the podcast space is not only do you get in front of the right audience, but also since it's all online, you're creating backlinks and you're creating a lot of these different things. So you're actually changing your online ecosystem, which is a really big deal as well. So when a brand comes to us, we find out, what does your perfect type of listener look like? because you can target down in the podcast space to a level that a lot of people just couldn't do before. And then we actually take them through a process of what to say on that show and the call to action to have at the end, because there is a little bit of a mix of, I guess, new media PR and also direct response marketing. We can actually take them through how to do their interview properly so that they do see conversions and they do see the right brand growth. And we end up looking with clients before they do their program and also after they do their program, what does your online footprint look like as well? Because a lot of the backlinks you're getting from these different places that are hosting platforms are actually high authority backlinks. So not only are you getting in front of the right people with the right positioning, but you're also getting more of the right links to your site that are do follow links as opposed to no follow links. So it's actually helping in that way as well.
Interesting. Looking at it from the listener standpoint, which is essentially the potential base that these marketers would want to go for. How have you seen the trends change in that? Because you mentioned, we thought we maybe hit a plateau in 2012 or reached that first peak. Where is it right now, and where do you see it going in the next couple of years?
I see this really as like the golden age for podcasting, because I know a lot of people are talking about it like that. Last year, there was about 550,000 podcasts out there, and Apple actually took a look at it this year, and they said there's about 705,000 podcasts out there. So the space is growing very, very quickly, and a lot of the shows are super niche. Like when you look at it, you can get in front of, let's say, you want to be in front of different type of practice marketing podcasts if you're in the health space, or you want to build your brand by like being on Joe Rogan or something like that. There's an ability to reach so many different types of people. And I think as you're seeing more and more celebrities and thought leaders come into the space, it's just going to continue to grow. And I've said this before, I'm just curious, like, if the automotive industry stops putting radios in cars, could that be the end of radio? And do we just go towards podcasting? So I think we're in a very interesting time right now in where things are going.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's still a certain marketplace that will listen to the radio, in particular sports radio or political radio. I feel like those two, mainly those AM brands, those are going to be hard to. They'll be there for a little while, but I totally agree that specificity that you can get with like specifically what you want to listen to and finding all of that. You said there's 700-some thousand different podcasts. Like you can find whatever you want to find. I would imagine at that point. Do you anticipate any contraction in that, or do you think it's just going to keep on growing?
So here's the interesting thing. When they took a look at it, they found of those 705,000, only 18% were active, and that means publishing at least one episode a month. So you do see a lot of shows doing what's called pod fading. They get to maybe 20 episodes or something, and they just don't continue because they don't either have the right idea or the right purpose behind what they're doing. So I think you are going to see like a leveling up of the space. And a lot of these people that are doing it as a hobby or not taking it seriously or not seeing how it can connect with their business or their brand, you are going to see those shows not continue. So will the space continue to grow? Yes. Will that percentage of active shows grow? I think it will as people start to take it more seriously. Because I know even for myself, I launched my first podcast in early 2015, and I had like 100 downloads. Nobody was listening to me. Mm-hmm. And by taking it seriously and seeing how I could use that to reach the right people and connect with my brand, we're in the millions with the number of people we've been listened to now. So it's really about people taking it seriously, and you are going to see the cream rising to the top in the podcast space over the next few years.
Well, for people who want to find out more information about what you're doing and more information on your studies and trends, what's the best place for them to go?
Absolutely. Well, if they want to set up a call to talk to us about it, the best place is over at commandyourbrand.media/book a call, or they can check out our site, which is commandyourbrand.media.
Fantastic. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us here today. Really, really interesting, good discussion. And Jeremy, best of luck. And everybody go check out Jeremy's podcast as well.
Thank you.